Good afternoon. I'll call the April 24th, 2019 meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Could we please have a roll call?
Lee Peoples.
Present.
Anthony Blatt.
Present.
Jorge Tarnico. Matt Guillory.
Here.
Tyler Holmes.
Present.
Sarah Miller.
Present.
Toon Nguyen.
Present.
Marcus Uday. James Farnham. You have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the January 23rd, 2019 meeting. You have those in your packets. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to those minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
A motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have no cases withdrawn. We have no continuance requests. We have nothing on the consent docket. So we will move to the cases for individual consideration. UDCA 19-7, 600 Northwest 29th Street. Could staff give us an overview of this item, please?
Yes, this item is a request to install an attached sign, and due to the size of the sign, as was proposed, it requires a variance because it exceeds the maximum 6 square foot signage limitation that applies in the Paseo District. There's been a lot of movement on this application in the last week or so. First of all, last week we received a letter in opposition to the variance request. Subsequently to that, we received 2 letters in support of the request. And then late yesterday afternoon, we received another letter from the person who originally had opposed the proposed variance, withdrawing their opposition to the request. And that withdrawal was predicated on the applicant reducing the size of the sign. And we've provided copies of those letters to you at the dais, as well as 11 by 17 drawing that shows the new reduced size version of the sign. So with that, we've recommended approval of the variance to the commission. So it's kind of up to you to decide whether or not you want to support that and pass that along on to the Board of Adjustment. And we're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
Do we have a clear height to the bottom of the sign as proposed?
The minimum is 9 feet. We didn't go into getting a dimension on this because it's so far up on the wall.
But
we're sure that's going to meet that, and of course that will be enforced at the time the sign permit is issued.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for staff?
So the update here does show the revision in the sign size, correct?
The hard copy we passed out of the dais is the new reduced size version. I think the original was 120 inches tall, and this is 96.
I had a question for the restaurant that's under construction now. I believe it's called Frida, and then there's a complex that would be to the south of this.
Right.
I don't recall either of those properties requesting variances.
That's because signs on awnings are allowed to be 20 square feet.
Okay, okay. And so they have their signs on the awnings.
That's correct.
Okay, okay. Any other questions for staff? As the applicant here? Please, if you haven't signed in, go ahead and give us your address for the record.
Address is, sorry, can't remember what my address, 9th and Harvey is 902, I think is the address. And I will sign in, but I don't have a pen. So the projects that you all just mentioned, where Frida is, and Oso Restaurant is also, and Buttermilk, those were developed and are owned by Jeremy Foraker, and Jeremy wrote a very nice email in support of this sign. as did, thank you, as did the person who has the property directly north. And she wrote a very nice note, and Joy Reed-Belt, who is the grande dame of Paseo, and I certainly recognize that and respect that. After she and I had a number of discussions, she is actually coming out in favor of the sign, but is concerned that it not set a precedent for other big signs. But as I mentioned to her, there are no other big buildings. And so to be able to have signage within the limitations permitted under the ordinance, it would be basically 2 feet by 3 feet, and nobody knows these are apartments. One can't find them. There's no awning to put signage on, and so it just seems to make a lot of sense, and we will keep everything. It's very tasteful, if I may say so, and the designer of the sign is right back here, Mark Hansen from Sign Innovations, and you know, we just want to be a good citizen, just as I am down on Park Avenue. I've got 2 properties. On 16th Street, I've got property, and I have other properties, and I am a good steward and custodian of all my properties. So I'm proud of what I've been able to own, and I don't want to make anybody unhappy. So I think with Joy's endorsement, with Jeremy's endorsement, and with Amy at the 612 building, which is a school, if any of you know her, and her last name is escaping me right now, I think that they are all in favor of it, and they are big owners in the Paseo. And Rachel Cope, who bought the ACLU building, I was hoping that she would, enlist or endorse this, but I think she wanted to stay neutral because she wasn't aware that Joy had withdrawn her objection. So that's where we are on it, though. And again, there is no building of this magnitude, and as you come down, if there isn't a projecting sign like this, there's no way to properly sign it. So.
Any questions for the applicant? Any members of the public here that would like to speak to this item? Members of the commission, does anyone have any comments or concerns about this item?
I got a question. As far as the height of the sign from the ground to the height, why so high up?
If you could see the building as you see it on the far right picture, the top of the wall we've sort of mimicked the same top of the sign as to the top of the wall, and it just seems that that's the only place really to put it, because when you come down from 30th Street, Paseo starts at 30th and it ends at Walker, and as you come down, if you put it any lower, the trees that are on the hill going down would block it, and I think we also want to keep it out of reach of high jumping people. So, and it's really quite high, because before the drive it even commences, that wall, that stone wall that it's on, is approximately 5 feet, and then it's probably another close to 9 or 10 feet above that. So the sign is probably 14 to 16 feet above the actual ground.
Okay. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from commissioners or any motions?
One comment I have is precedence continues to come up within UDC, and it is like a really important thing to be cognizant of. My personal thing in this instance, it appears like it fits well with the surroundings and kind of the building itself. I personally just will say that each building in these districts is like a building by building thing, and just for the record is it should be valued that way versus just seeing it as this is approved this way. And like, there's appropriate things for different buildings, so just making that comment because I don't want precedents to continue to be used against us as commissioners, because it's really, these districts are so quirky that it is a building by building thing, in my opinion. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, I agree with your concerns. Technically our decisions aren't precedential like a court decision, but people do keep track of them and come in and say, well, you decided this way, why can't you do that for me? I mean, technically, and I cleared this up with staff, and I think it went out in an email to everybody, the sign rule in this instance is a regulation. So we have to follow what it says by the letter. To approve this, we couldn't do that. We would be, if we decide to recommend approval, we would be sending it on for a variance. And maybe when Paseo revisits these rules, I don't know how long that's been, but it might be something, as the district has changed and there's been a lot more development, maybe they want to revisit the size of the sign for future buildings.
Yeah, this is one of the, in fact, it's the only design district under UD jurisdiction that doesn't tie the size of the sign to the size of the wall that the sign is attached to. Everywhere else, we're working on a percentage basis, 10%, sometimes 15% of the wall area that the sign is attached to. So it doesn't take into account the size of the building, the proportion of the sign, so on and so forth. So that is probably something that when we do delve into re-looking, updating the standards in Paseo, we'll probably look at that.
Of course, Joy Rebel's concerned about precedent also, and I do think that this is the only large building, and incidentally, this is the 10-foot that you have a picture of up here. We're actually looking at doing an 8-foot sign, so it wouldn't have those same proportions, and it won't be as wide. That's 32 inches by 120. We're looking at 96 by 25 inches, I think. And so, but again, it's a hardship to try to follow the Paseo regulations, and it is in all of the urban design districts, it is the only one, I think, where they don't look at a ratio of the size of the wall. That wall's 34 feet wide, and I don't know the exact height of it. I apologize for that, but you have to have something there, and nobody can find those apartments. I mean, I've driven by them before I bought them a couple years ago. I don't know how many times I drove by them and never even saw them, never realized they were apartments. So anyway, I hope you'll recommend this for a variance and let us proceed. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe we have a member of the public who wants to speak, and I think he stepped out to take a phone call, so maybe we'll give him a minute. Does any commissioners have any other discussion on this while we wait?
I think that the sign of the size, the proportions, the way that it's attached to the building, and its line of sight characteristics from the street are all very good. I think that it looks really nice. I like the idea of making it a little bit shorter proportion-wise. I think you can still see it from the street. I like its placement, and I think it's been really well done. So I commend you for the sensitivity that was taken in creating it. So, I mean, I'm for this sign. I agree that we've got one other person, so we can wait as long as you feel it's appropriate.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I miss a question?
No, that gentleman indicated he wanted to speak to this, and I was going to give him a minute or so to come back in. Yes, sir, please come up and give us your name and address and sign in, please.
I'm from Ward 7. I didn't know Marcus was on the Urban Design Commission. I was going to ask over the diversity thing. And now that Marcus is in it, hey Marcus, how you doing? I go home.
Okay. Back to this item. Any other comments from the commission on this? Do we have any motions?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Neighborhood Conservation District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the maximum display surface area for attached signs.
We have a motion by Blatt. Any discussion on that motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Guillory. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. That passes. Now, because we have to provide a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, we will need a second motion on that.
I'll provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for a variance from the maximum display surface area for attached signs.
We have a motion from Blatt. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Guillory. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, you have your approval and your recommendation.
I'd like to add, I'd be remiss in not mentioning how helpful Mike has been throughout this process, because I could really find my way through this.
Thank you.
It's helpful as soon as I'm
Thank you. Okay, moving on down the agenda, we have no other business. We do have a number of communications, and I imagine that's because we have a couple meetings that we missed. These have all already been administratively approved. Would any member of the commission like to discuss any of these items? Is there any member of the public that would like to discuss any of these items? All right, any comments from planning staff?
No. Our next meeting, well, we'll get to that in a minute, but we do have a meeting in May, so.
Any comments from commissioners? Our next meeting is May 22nd, and applications were to be submitted April 23rd. No other items of business on the agenda, so we will be adjourned.
you.